Make America Greedy Again. How the Trump administration prioritized wealth over welfare. The Trump administration's Make America Greedy Again philosophy is evident in its recent policies, which have consistently favored wealth accumulation for the affluent, often at the expense of broader societal welfare. This approach is particularly apparent in the administration's executive orders, tariffs, and federal government restructuring, all of which have led to significant financial shifts that have reshaped the U.S. economic landscape. Executive orders benefiting the wealthy. President Trump has signed several executive orders that prioritize corporate interests and the affluent. Establishment of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund. One of the most controversial executive orders directed the creation of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, purportedly aimed at promoting fiscal sustainability and economic growth. Supporters claim that such a fund could generate significant revenue for the country. However, critics argue that it centralizes financial power and potentially benefits private interests aligned with the administration. The lack of transparency regarding the fund's management raises concerns about corruption and cronyism. Suspension of anti-bribery law enforcement. Another major executive order involved pausing prosecutions under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, FCPA. This move, widely criticized by ethics experts, reduces legal repercussions for unethical business practices and emboldens corporate misconduct. By easing regulations on bribery and corruption, the administration has created an environment where corporations can engage in questionable business practices with minimal oversight. Tariffs and trade policies. The administration's trade policies have had significant economic implications, particularly for consumers and domestic businesses. Imposition of tariffs on key trading partners. Trump's tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China have disrupted global supply chains, leading to increased production costs. These costs are often passed on to consumers, disproportionately affecting middle and lower-income households. The tariffs have also led to trade retaliation, further escalating economic tensions and increasing the financial burden on American businesses. Economic impact on specific sectors. Certain industries, such as manufacturing and agriculture, have suffered the most from these tariffs. Farmers have faced declining export opportunities, while manufacturers have seen rising costs for essential materials. The tariffs have resulted in job losses and higher consumer prices, undermining economic stability for many working-class Americans. Federal government restructuring and budget cuts. Significant changes in federal agencies reflect a shift toward privatization and reduced public oversight. Downsizing of USAID. The administration has drastically reduced the United States Agency for International Development's workforce from over 10,000 to approximately 290 employees. This move has effectively dismantled U.S. foreign aid programs, redirecting funds away from international development and potentially benefiting private contractors aligned with administration interests. The budget cuts have also weakened America's influence abroad, as fewer resources are allocated to diplomatic and humanitarian efforts. Creation of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Led by Elon Musk, the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, has implemented extensive job and regulatory cuts across federal agencies. While proponents argue that these measures reduce bureaucratic waste, critics warn that they have centralized power within the executive branch and eroded checks and balances. Additionally, Musk's private enterprises have stood to benefit from the deregulation efforts, raising concerns about conflicts of interest. Financial implications and redirection of funds. The administration's policies have led to significant financial shifts. Budget cuts to social programs. Trump's proposed budgets have included substantial cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security disability benefits, totaling hundreds of billions over the next decade. These reductions could lead to decreased access to essential services for vulnerable populations. The cuts particularly impact low-income families, elderly citizens, and individuals with disabilities, exacerbating economic inequality. Increased wealth for fossil fuel billionaires. Following policy changes favoring the fossil fuel industry, 15 U.S. fossil fuel billionaires saw their collective wealth increase by $3.31 billion in a single day. This surge reflects the administration's prioritization of fossil fuel interests over environmental concerns. The rollback of environmental protections has allowed energy companies to expand operations with fewer restrictions, contributing to increased carbon emissions and environmental degradation. Estimated financial impact of federal employee firings and program cuts. The Trump administration's aggressive downsizing of the federal workforce and cuts to social programs have had far-reaching economic consequences. Estimated number of federal employees fired: over 100,000, savings from employee firings. Approximately $9 billion annually. Programs eliminated or cut. USAID foreign aid programs -$40 billion redirected, Medicaid and Medicare reductions -$500 billion cut over 10 years, Social Security disability benefits -$72 billion cut over a decade, Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, funding reduced by 30%, saving $2.4 billion annually. Public housing assistance -$20 billion in budget cuts over 5 years. While these budget cuts have led to short-term savings, they have also resulted in job losses, reduced public services, and increased economic hardship for many Americans. Conclusion: the greed-driven economic strategy the Trump administration's actions exemplify a "Make America Greedy Again" philosophy, where policies are designed to enrich the wealthy and powerful while undermining ethical standards and neglecting the needs of the broader population. By prioritizing tax cuts for the rich, rolling back regulatory protections, imposing tariffs that disproportionately harm consumers, and slashing funding for essential social programs, the administration has deepened economic disparities and reinforced systemic inequalities. As these policies continue to unfold, the long-term consequences will likely become even more pronounced, affecting economic stability, social mobility, and public trust in government institutions. The administration's legacy will be one of prioritizing corporate profits over public welfare, reinforcing the very economic imbalances that many Americans have sought to overcome.